Hi, everybody. Joe Buzzello here for SEL Radio, SELsource.com, SELsource.com, our video podcast, our audio podcast. You can watch this, listen to it, and hopefully if you're a salesperson or a sales leader or an entrepreneur, hopefully you do listen to a lot of podcasts, read a lot of books, do everything we recommend inside of the SELsource platform. I'm Joe Buzzello. I'm the founder of SELsource.com, also the author of a few books. Cap Equation, my first book, and I'll talk about our sequel to that in a minute. Life in Sales, another great book about, and it's volume 1, so that indicates there will be a volume 2 when I get around to it. But that's about so many of the mentors I've had in my early sales career. And I actually wrote a novel, Drawing Circles, based on some actual events. If you like reading fiction, and you might know that there's some truth behind the fiction, you'll enjoy it. So we have a great guest on this morning. We have a great topic. The topic is employing your why, engaging your why, using your why, leveraging your why. And our guest this morning is Mr. Chuck Farmer. Chuck is, and you know Chuck Farmer, he's a regular guest and personality on SELsource.com, our platform. He's a Cap Equation certified instructor, CECI designation. He's a great sales leader. He has had a tremendous career, 2 decades in food and beverage management, now closing in on 2 decades. I shouldn't say that. It makes you sound very old.
Right, yeah.
2 decades in the insurance industry as a sales leader with a Fortune 500 company. He splits his time between Nashville and Memphis, so he's a Tennessee guy. He's a Vol at heart. And he is one of the most inspirational, motivational people I know. He's a man of true sales grit. Welcome, Chuck Farmer. Chuck, good morning, buddy.
Good morning, man. How you doing out there in Phoenix land?
I'm doing good. We're here in the Metro Phoenix area. You're in Memphis this morning, correct?
Correct. I'm in Memphis right now. That's correct.
New office in Memphis. So exciting. Congratulations on your recent promotion.
Thank you.
That company that has you working with them is fortunate. They have a great asset in Mr. Chuck Farmer. So I want to tell people that you and I are collaborating. You're one of 11 collaborators on our next book, which is called Winning Sales Attitudes. And Winning Sales Attitudes, that's a word, and we may change the title, but probably not at this point. I think we're going to press pretty quickly. But Winning Sales Attitudes is all about the head, getting the head right. The A is the A in the CAP equation. If you haven't read the CAP equation, a foolproof formula for unlimited success in sales, go ahead and pick it up. You could go to Joe Buzzello, Buzzello, Joe Buzzello author page on Amazon. Put on Amazon CAP equation or Joe Buzzello, it'll come up. Chuck Farmer is one of 11 collaborators on our next book, Winning Sales Attitudes. That's the A in the CAP equation. Competencies, attitudes, multiplied by pipeline practices, creates unlimited success in sales. It's a formula that does not fail if you follow it. So we could, actually, if everyone followed that formula, Chuck, we'd have a pretty easy job as sales leaders, managers, and coaches, right?
That's for sure. Amen.
Yeah, but not everyone does, and we know that. But we in the Winning Sales Attitudes book, we talk about the farthest distance a salesperson will ever have to travel, which is the 6 inches between their ears. That's a long way for a lot of people. So Chuck, I prepared, and I want to let people know that you've contributed a couple chapters, and this one, employing your why, engaging your why, leveraging your why, like a lighthouse in foul weather. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about this why, and I actually think that this podcast, this session will be as beneficial to sales leaders as it will be, in fact, even more so than entry-level salespeople. I think entry-level salespeople can get a lot out of this session, but I think a lot of my questions and possibly your answers will be geared to helping a sales leader understand the why from maybe a couple different perspectives. So is it okay if I shoot some questions at you and rapid fire, and if we dig into this?
Absolutely. I'm ready to go.
Okay. So you have stated, and in the book it will read, that you say, Chuck Farmer says, the scriptures of Chuck Farmer say, you must start your career with specific and personal whys. And then you'll focus on them when times get tough, and times will get tough. So why do you think that why is so important? We urge people to find their why, but talk about it from the perspective of why it's important, especially when times get a little rough. What happens there?
Yeah, Joe, in our chapter, we liken the why to a lighthouse. I know people use that a lot, but it really is a great analogy for this, and that there are times when you have to be able to point to a point in time or a point in space, a location to guide you. And in tough times and tough seas, those mariners, they need a lighthouse. Well, in tough times, salespeople need that foundation and that why did they even start this business in the first place? Because, like you said, things are going to get tough. And if you keep your eye down and aren't focused on the reason why you're doing these things, it can really be disheartening and you can lose your way. And you absolutely, bottom line, you're not going to be successful.
Yeah. And if a salesperson doesn't have a strong mentor, coach, or leader to help them refocus on their why, and hopefully we'll talk about this, but hopefully the leader has helped them identify and knows what their why is and connects to that. But if a leader isn't doing that and a salesperson, an entry-level salesperson, someone in their first year, maybe even their second year, loses connection with their why, if they're not focusing on that, what kinds of crap are they focusing on? That's
Exactly
another
right.
good
That's
question.
exactly right. Yes.
And
I think that, it's easy when you get home after the day you had and you see the bills on the table. You see the things that you need to buy, and it's easy to focus on those things because they're tangible and they're immediate. And that's easy for us. We're used to focusing on those kind of things. And when we do that, we get our eyes off the long-term vision of why we started this business in the first place. And that's when you really need to have that why in a strong way.
so at the end of a long day, maybe at the end of a week that wasn't quite as successful as you planned, and in sales, we have many weeks like that. We have more weeks like that than perfect weeks for sure.
That's
So
right.
at the end of a long day or long week, you're going to focus on something. You have to make a decision what you're going to focus on.
That's correct. Yeah, just
So,
yesterday, Dan Amos was on a conference call with us doing an Aflac Live event. And Dan Amos reminded us of that quote that we all have heard, that there's nothing lower than a salesperson's low and there's nothing higher than a salesperson's high. And that's so true. And during that low period, boy, that's when you really need that why.
yeah, absolutely. Good segue into my next question. So when you've observed a salesperson we all know, again, commission sales, B2B sales, tough gig. So when you've observed a salesperson that isn't aligned, I'll use the word aligned with their why, how does that manifest itself? What do you see changing? What do you see happening when a person isn't aligned with a why, especially when they hit a rough patch?
Great question. I think this is important for us to really remember. And the first thing I think you obviously notice is lack of activity. As you coach and mentor and train these individuals, it's going to be an obvious lowering of activity. Second of all, I think it literally gets to where after a period of time, if they're not coached to it, if they don't look to their why, you can even begin to see even a physical implementation of this concern on their heart and on their mind. And you can actually begin to see them almost get into a depressed state. And you can see people that are not focused and are not energetic. They literally lose energy because they begin to focus on all the negatives and they don't have that positive why. So it's vital, I believe, for us as coaches to see that in them and to continue to mentor and coach to where we keep them out of that low. And we've even said before that it's a giant ball. When you get into that depression, if you do have activity, it's not going to work. Because Joe, when you walk in the door, you almost get to the point to where even that potential client can see that on your body language, and therefore you're not going to have great responses. So it just begins to begin a great ball where even if you do go back to the activity, but you really haven't seen that why in your heart, the activity you do have doesn't reap results.
So what I heard there very clearly, I've taken some notes. when someone is not strongly aligned or connected to their why, you first see activity either decrease, or in some cases it could stop completely if someone gets too low.
Absolutely.
And then you see the concern. You can read the concern on their face. Am I hearing that correctly? So we see the concern on their face. And then even a depression can set in. You could see everything about their body language change. And we have only a minimal knowledge of how powerful the brain is. I could get into the brain science, and this would be an hour podcast instead of a 25-minute podcast. But everything that happens here affects the rest of our physicality. You know that from running the Tough Mudders and all the things that you do. I didn't mention that, but you love to go run those Tough Mudders and those things that really test you. So the concern shows on the face, and then there's a loss of energy. And if the coach and mentor and trainer isn't watching for that, then they could just, I'm going to excuse my French, but we could just blow smoke up their ass and maybe get them to increase their calendar activity or the schedule activity. But that little blip of activity won't even be quality activity. Is that what I heard you say?
Absolutely. Exactly right. And, ultimately, those people, as we know, will simply disappear. And a majority of those people won't even talk to you about it. They will just, if you've ever watched the Men in Black movies, where they kind of give you a little spot and then you forget everything and you disappear, we kind of have that in our business sometimes, where people just disappear on us.
We used to call that they Houdini'd us.
Yeah,
hey, that guy Houdini'd me.
I like that.
I don't know where he is. He just disappeared.
That's right.
So tell me when, and this question, I just want to follow the logical chain of thought here. So you see someone who the activity goes down, you can monitor that through whatever means, CRMs or whatever reporting we use. We see that activity getting less and less. We see the concern showing on their face. We see their shoulders drop. We see that depression set in. We see the loss of energy. So how do you, when you see someone in that state, what methods, are there one or two methods that you employ to get them reconnected with their why?
Great question. It's, I get migraines every now and then, Joe, and it's based on the weather. And when I start to feel one come along, if I simply take 2 Advil, I can knock it out and move on. But if I let it go too far, it's terrible. And I have to go to a dark room and get under the blankets and try to go to sleep for a while. And that's kind of the way this is. If you catch it early enough, a coach can simply realign them to their why. You can pull them in, maybe take them to lunch. You can ask them what their why was. You can remind them that you asked them their why during an interview, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a few minutes. And you can really refocus them and then go back out there energized and continue on. And then sometimes actually do more than they were doing before because they've been re-energized. If you wait too long, it's going to take a whole lot more work and effort to bring them back in that area. And then just like a migraine, if you wait too long, really, to be honest, there are times when you can't do anything. But I do have a great story along with that. Just yesterday, one of my leaders here in Memphis told a great example. It was actually about himself. And early in his career, he had lost his way. And he had actually taken a job painting a house. And his coach was calling him, and he kept blowing smoke and telling him, yeah, I'm working. When in reality, he was out painting a house to make money. And the coach found out what was going on, and he called him. And he said, what are you doing painting that house? And he said, well, how'd you find out? And I just had to make money. And he said, you put that paintbrush down. I'm coming to get you. And we're going out and we're making approaches together right now. And that leader of mine said he put the paintbrush down and he told the owner, I'm not going to charge you a penny. You just need to find somebody else to finish the house. I'm not charging you for what I did. And he got in the car with his coach. He went out and made approaches. They had a great day. And that leader is now here doing a great job. As a matter of fact, just had an amazing year. It changed his life. And it's just a perfect example of sometimes you've got to push the button and you've got to do something very dramatic to get them out of that depression that they may get in because they're not really reflecting on their why.
So the big takeaway there is that you believe, and that, by the way, that's a great story. It really illustrates that you have to get real with people. You have to be willing you have to be willing to challenge them when they're not working and find out what the challenge is. And if you find out they're disconnected with why they even started doing this, and you're willing to reconnect them, you also have to be willing to get real and take it by the hand and go do the work with them. And
Absolutely.
there are a lot of sales leaders, coaches, and mentors, in my opinion, that are lazy, that won't do that. Do you share that opinion?
Yes, I believe that's one of the key integral portions of our business is obviously the associates, the first level themselves need to work more. But if we had more coaches and mentors that would focus on actually just motivating and inspiring and working with them on their why, the results would be dramatic.
You know, I probably can't count on both hands and both feet the number of times when I was in the position of being a state sales coordinator, and I had several levels, 2 levels of management and a management training level, so 3 levels of trainers or managers in between me. I can't tell you how many times I stepped down, step level field training, stepped down to take a person that I believed had extremely high potential and was willing to work, but was having some kind of challenge. I can't tell you how many times I got in the car, went in the field with them and made a call or 2 or spent a day prospecting. And it was unheard of at the time. I had my peers and colleagues say, you shouldn't be doing that at your level. And I tell them, well, I shouldn't really be doing anything else but this at my level. I should be looking at every piece of talent that's in the business and finding out and really asking the question, what is it? Is it competencies? Is it your head? Is it attitude? Is it your practices of managing your pipeline? What's keeping you from being successful? Because I don't see any reason you shouldn't be earning the kind of money that our top salespeople or middle managers are earning. So I believe that if we could beat the laziness out of our coaches and trainers, we'd be in much, and maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe a baseball bat would help, but I'm kidding you. We don't resort to violence. We resort to using psychology. So let me ask you this. You went this place, so I want to ask you, so during your interview, I know that you asked questions to peel layers off the onion to get at what's going on inside of a person's brain, why they're doing this. And you start with that. You don't ever stop asking what the purpose, what the drive, what the motivation is, what the internal motivation is. And we believe that motivation is an internal game, not an external game. The best we can hope to do, we can't motivate anyone. The best we can hope to do is learn enough about them to inspire them to find, identify, and we can stoke the flames of their internal motivation. But motivation is an internal job, not an external job. Best we can hope to do is learn those things and inspire someone. So when you connect with them early in the interview process. I'm curious, and I think people listening and watching would be curious as well. What are the types? Can you give us examples of the questions you ask to find those internal motivations?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually just did my first interviews in Memphis yesterday afternoon. So just a few hours ago, I was pulling people into this office. And what I always tell people is the first thing after I greet them is simply, hey, I'd like to get to know you a little bit. And I want to get to know a little bit about what are you looking for? And I tell them that's the most important thing to me. And so as I get started, I ask them and tell them a little bit about themselves. But then I begin immediately and say, what are you looking for? What is the perfect job or opportunity for you? If you walked in and you could just design the next move for yourself and for your family, what does that look like? And it's amazing the responses you get. And that allows me to go from there and obviously to share what we have and how what we do can align with the vision they gave me before they even knew what we really did. Oftentimes, as you know, all they know about Aflac, for example, is just a duck. And so I asked them their why from the beginning. And then as I go through the interview, it's amazing how I can help them to almost focus that why. And before they leave, they've taken something that maybe they hardly had given any thought to, and they've become laser focused on, this is my why, this is what I want and need. And if it matches what we do, they're excited. And I had 4 or 5 of those yesterday that just couldn't hardly stand it. I asked one on a scale of 1 to 10 how interested were they, and they said 500. But I also had someone stand up and say, I really appreciate your time, but this is just not for me. It didn't meet their why. And so that's why it's so important. I don't want to talk that person into coming on the team, for example, because their why is not strong. They wouldn't be here because we wouldn't be able to meet their why. But that other person now, that's going to burn off. If they come on the team and they start training, at some point, they're not going to be a 500 anymore. They're going to become a 1 or 2, and it's going to be important for their trainer and myself to refocus them in on what we discussed yesterday.
So starting with the interview process, you ask questions like, and I'm going to say it in my words, paint your perfect professional world. What would your perfect, ideal career consist of, look like, feel like? And they're painting a picture. And while they're painting that picture, you, the interviewer, the potential future mentor, are taking careful notes because they're giving you a blueprint of how to coach them to those objectives.
Exactly right.
A beautiful thing. Okay, so when you start asking those questions, what are some of the most common? I'm curious. I think I know, but I'm curious. What are some of the most common themes, the common whys that you hear, that we hear, when people want to jump into commission sales, B2B sales, or individuals?
And as you know, Joe, this is a big part of what our chapter in the book's going to be about. And the first one we talk about is the schedule. That's just absolutely huge for a lot of people, if not everybody, but particularly for some individuals. Yesterday, I had 2 people that specifically told me they were single parents and they had children. And so they wanted flexibility and freedom of their schedule. And so that's one of the ones I really hit on beginning, because I'm a restaurant guy, as you know. I worked in the restaurant industry for almost 2 decades, and I worked many a nights, many a weekends, a lot of holidays. It seemed like when everybody else was having fun, I was working the hardest. And so this is a great gig for me. I love the freedom, the flexibility of the schedule. It's not just the schedule itself, but it's the freedom to control your schedule. So that's the first one that we talk about almost all the time.
What else comes up? What other whys are common?
The next one would be long-term wealth. Again, people are used to a hourly wage. They're used to a salary. They're used to maybe not getting any raise at all or small raises. And so they hear the opportunity that we have in the sales business to build something long-term, and not only to make a better salary this year, but long-term wealth, to build through stock, to build through renewals. They are just extremely ecstatic because that's what they've been looking for. A lot of people are amazed because they hardly knew that existed, with all due respect. And so long-term wealth is a big one. And then right along with that, Joe, is one that we talk about a lot, to be honest, is the opportunities for us to go on trips, to win contests and do the things that we're able to do. You know, just over the last few years, my wife and I have been able to go to Hawaii, the Dominican, Destin, San Francisco. It's just amazing the trips that we get to go on. And that's amazing for people. Just yesterday, again, I had a gentleman tell me that neither he nor anybody that was where he worked that he knew had taken a vacation in a year, much less being able to go to those kind of places, much less paid for by a company.
And I've had 4 decades in professional sales industries, working with some great companies, a company you work with now and many others. And it seems like for most of those 4 decades, myself and when I was single, and for the last 23 years, me and my wife have enjoyed, 2 or 3 wonderful vacations a year to places we would never dream of going. I'm kind of lazy about travel. I'm not lazy. I'm actually a workaholic. So I would never leave my office to go on a trip unless I was forced to, but I was forced to travel all over the world.
Yeah.
And the friendships that are forged in our industry are very unique, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. We were able to not only enjoy those trips, but during those trips, we make lifelong friendships, and we get out of that normal work routine, and we get to truly know the people and their spouses. Your spouses get to know spouses, and the next thing you know, you have lifelong friendship.
Isn't that dangerous, though? Isn't that part of it? I don't like that part of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that's something I think people really point to. Again, they work all the time, and they work and they go home. and they're not able to really even enjoy getting out and meeting new people and building new friendships. So when you combine vacations to a great place with new friendships, that's a great combo.
And I think of our friendship. Our friendship was forged. We met each other. I actually followed you on stage at a sales event. I was a paid speaker. You were an unpaid speaker at the time. And I just fell in love with you. And I realized, well, here's a person who kind of thinks like I think, and he articulates himself in not a dissimilar way. I think everyone has their own style, but I just loved your style. And I realized that we were kindred spirits. And so we developed, we're in the trenches and we've had similar experiences, and these kind of friendships, you can't put a price tag on them. What about helping people? I think people that look at sales from the outside think salespeople are selfish or greedy. But how many people, when you ask that question, talk about having an impact in their community?
Great question, Joe. And the bottom line is that's actually number one. It is absolutely amazing to me how many people will stumble and think and really have to consider what their perfect career would look like, but yet they'll immediately say they want to help people. They want to impact lives. And it's just a huge percentage of people spit that out at the very beginning. They may not know the other part. They may not even mention the freedom of their schedule, but they know they want to help people. And that's just a key cog in what we do. It's an absolute part of that why, because that's something that, be honest, sometimes we as coaches or mentors don't even have to have anything to do with it. If that's their true why, and maybe they're down, and then all of a sudden they have to help someone with a claim, and they're actually truly able to help somebody, and they get that thank you from that client that tells them, man, I don't know what I would have done without this money and without this claim, and I appreciate you helping me. That's an immediate inspiration right there. And so the helping people, I think, is just almost like a foundation of what we do.
And I think about the first time that I sold a product B2B. I started selling cars. In fact, the picture on A Life in Sales, that was taken by my mom before I left the house my first day on the car lot. But selling cars, you really don't see any impact. When I got out, I spent about a year in the car industry, and then I got in the insurance industry. And the first time someone used an insurance product that I had sold them and shared with me how that money affected them, we were selling these crazy little accident policies. But the first time I saw how it impacted their lives, I thought, I'm doing something more than just selling a product and earning a commission. I'm selling a product that really impacts a life. So, the millennial generation is a great generation. And I have taken note that they're interested in their careers. They're interested in not only money and advancement and all those things, but they're keenly interested in having an impact in their community and doing good things and being part of a cause. So that is significant. So I have one last question. I want to pick one of those common whys. I want to pick freedom and flexibility, those two words. We know the problems with those words.
Yes.
We know the two sides of the coin.
Yes.
My last question is going to be about flexibility and freedom. That why. Talk to us about how that why has two sharp edges to it.
Yeah, I like to always remind people that the sword of freedom and flexibility cuts both ways, and it truly does. For some people, it's what they've been looking for and they desire, and how they are not just desire it, but that's where they actually can flourish the most. Their personality, their style, their talents lend themselves to having freedom and flexibility. However, there are others, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, Joe. That's just it. We're just different personalities. But some people have a need to have complete structure. They need to be told what time they should show up for work. They need to be told what time to leave work. And some people simply want to be able to say, that allows me to leave work at work. And when they're finished, they want to not have to worry about work at all. And there's absolutely plenty of opportunities for those people in lots of industries. And I'm from the restaurant industry, and there are a lot of lifers that I worked with that love that structure. And we need those people and love those people. But for our industry, we really need people that can flourish in the freedom. And I think it's obvious, Joe, to us and other leaders been around long at all. You can see that very quickly when they can't really fix themselves on that freedom and control their activities.
So when a newer salesperson comes into our industry and you see that they're not self-governing, are there things that you share with them that can help them understand the importance of self-governing and discipline?
Yes, I mean, first of all, obviously the inspiration of the why is what we begin to focus on, but then you've got to drill down and you've got to share with them that we know how to be successful in this business. You know, you've been in this business 5 years or 10 years, and as a leader and a mentor, we've got to really remind them that we have a structure and a plan that works. It allows for your personality. It allows for you to do some things new and different, as I'm sure Joe Buzzello did. But there's certain things that we know are going to work in this business, and activity is a main focus of that when you first start out. And if you're not doing those things, you're not going to see results. And again, it's just a giant ball. But if we can focus them in on, hey, the activity is going to allow you to see results, and it's a ball both ways. If you have activity and see results, you're going to be excited. You're going to want to do it again, and that ball begins to grow as well. So we really need to focus them in on the activity part immediately. We've got to have some structure with regard to activity to make sure that they keep that in the forefront.
So it sounds like freedom and flexibility is not only this great benefit, this wildly great why that they come in for, it's also something we need to be very, very responsible to. It seems like we need to challenge someone to become very responsible to and observant of the freedom and flexibility. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, so why is engaging the why, employing your why, like a lighthouse when you're out at sea when times are rough. Great having you on. Obviously, we'll do this again. And by the way, I'm so excited about Winning Sales Attitudes. That'll be the first book that Chuck Farmer is featured in, but not the last. I think you're working on a book of your own, and that is this man has true sales grit. I'll say that up front. He is again one of the great personalities in our industry and our business. Chuck, thank you for being on. Really appreciate it, and wishing you a great and productive upcoming quarter.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
And with that, thank you. And with that, we'll end this session for SELSource, SELSource.com. This is Joe Buzzello, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.